British influencer now identifies as a non-binary Korean. Coming up in 30 seconds. Yeah, hey, this is Matt Criscuolo coming to you up close and personal. Thank you for tuning in. Most of the time I do reactions to music videos, but this time, listen, I do, in my free time, I do like to watch things about politics and, about politics and religion and stuff like that. Other things that interest me as well. I watch things that are liberal and Democrat, and watch things that are conservative and Republican. I try to absorb it all because I'm curious. I'm an observer of sorts. Now, I do have my positions, but they tend to fall a little bit more in the middle. But speaking of identifying, I don't really identify as one party or another, and I certainly don't identify as a non-binary Korean. So I am curious to know exactly what it is like to identify as a non-binary Korean, and also what I guess Ben Shapiro is going to say about it, because I find him interesting as well. Let's get right to it.
I identify as Korean. That's just my culture. That's my home country. That's exactly how I look now.
But people are very angry at Ollie London. What's making you so mad, bro? Bigotry? Ollie London is just as Korean as Caitlyn Jenner is a woman. Just as Korean. Big news coming out of Britain. I think groundbreaking news. A British influencer named Ollie London is a non-binary person. They have identified as non-binary. But not only that, Ollie London, because Ollie London is a fan of apparently something called K-pop. I will admit that I was not informed on this particular trend. It is
K-pop, I guess, is Korean pop, and I've done some reactions to BTS and Blackpink and stuff like this. Fun, it's fun stuff. It's not my cup of tea per se, but it's certainly, I can see where the appeal is to it, and it's fun stuff. It's very sweet and sugary, and it's it's definitely fun, and some of it actually is really good. And some of the musicians, I can tell, are serious musicians, but that I don't. That's to the extent of what I know about K-pop.
Korean pop. Ollie London is a big fan of a particular Korean pop star named Park Ji-min, and decided to have $150,000 worth of plastic surgery in order to, quote unquote, look more Korean. And now Ollie London identifies as trans Korean. Here's Ollie London explaining his new identity.
Or anyone online as British, because I identify as Korean. That's just my culture. That's my home country. That's exactly how I look now. And I also identify as Jimin. That's my Korean name. But not only that, I know it's a little bit confusing for some people. Nobody's ever come out as Jimin or Korean, but this is something that you guys know if you follow my journey for the last 8 years. I've really struggled with identity issues, with who I am.
Trans Koreans are Koreans. Let me put it again. Trans Koreans are Koreans. Okay? And if I say it over and over, it becomes true. Now, you're going to have to explain to me why Ollie London is not a Korean. Really, and if you say things...
Well, this is bordering on silly. I don't even understand what the controversy is. Obviously, Ben has to have a show and he has to have content. I get it, and he wants to talk about things, and, he's just trying to make a point, which I've heard him make before, that just because one identifies as this, that, or the other thing doesn't mean that you are actually that. And I think that Ben's position is he thinks that it is mental illness. It's not for me to say. At certain times, it certainly appears like mental illness. I don't know. But I have enough respect for people to say, hey, if you want to do whatever the hell you want with your body, I guess, just make sure that if it's a kid, give the kid a chance to grow up. And learn and grow and be, without cutting things off and adding things. I think that's risky because you could, what I mean? You can't put some of that stuff back. So, wouldn't it be a tragedy to cut something off or add something only to find out after a certain amount of time that something has changed and shifted and you don't want that anymore? Well, then there's no going back. So I suggest that, in my opinion, if I have a kid, if he had come to me as a younger kid and said he wanted to do something like that, I would have said, wait a second, no fucking way, man. You're going to wait a little bit. There's no way. I mean, but of course... I'm just saying that right now. I don't know if I was in that situation and had, really was living that, what that would be like. So, but I do have enough respect for people to say, hey, do whatever you want, I guess. But what's the controversy? As long as it doesn't get infiltrate and you forcing me to, call you they, their, this, cis, that, and the other thing, that's where I think it gets a little bit weird. I'm still old fashioned. It's he, him, her, and if it's a trans guy that turns into a woman, then I'll call her, or whatever. I don't care.
It's like, well, Ali London has never been Korean. Yes, but trans women are not women. I mean, not a single trans woman has ever been a woman. Not one. And if you say, well, Ali London doesn't even have any of the characteristics of being a Korean absent surgery, I will say to you, neither does a trans woman. And if you say to me that Ali London has never gone through the experience of actually being Korean, didn't grow up Korean, I'll say neither has a trans woman. There are zero distinctions, none, between being trans Korean and being a trans person of another sex. None. In fact, the only distinctions cut in favor of being transracial rather than transsexual. You can more easily shift your race, which is, in fact, a fluid concept. Right? Race is a social construct, apparently. If race is a social construct, you should be able to fluidly shift between them, between the races, far more easily than sex, which is a biological concept, deeply ingrained and rooted. So, if you say trans women are women, and if you say that everybody's a bigot, if you refuse to acknowledge that trans women are women because they're not, then you need to tell me right now. Explain to me that if Ali London had a bunch of surgeries to appear like a woman, or more like a woman, and then said, I am a woman, you would all be cheering the bravery. So brave. So wonderful, so non-stereotypical. So just, it's not playing on stereotypes. It's not reducing femininity to a bunch of surgeries and gender dysphoria. No. He would be a woman now. But if he identifies as Korean, absolutely not. Wrong. Can't do it. And so I say to you, during Pride Month, okay, it is Pride Month. Live your truth, Ali. Live your truth. Ali London is just as Korean as Caitlyn Jenner is a woman. Just as Korean as Caitlyn Jenner is a woman. Now you may say, well, Ali London is just a performance artist. That doesn't matter. You don't get to invade Ali London's truth. You don't get to tell Ali London what they are. By the way, Ali London has now declared their pronouns. Ali London's pronouns, it should be noted, are now they, them, core, en. I'm not kidding you. Those are the pronouns. And I've been told that there are many different types of pronouns by no less a source than the New York Times, that people have been using neo-pronouns. So there really is no problem here. And in fact, if you don't like this, you are a bigot. So apparently,
I say let the thing run its course. I mean, if people want to be referred to a certain way, that's fine. I mean, if I get it wrong and you want to, and I didn't personally, I'm going to be like, whatever, if I said, he, and the person says, no, you got to refer to me as cis or core or Ian or whatever. I'd be like, what? I think it's silly. It doesn't make me upset. Honestly, it doesn't make me upset. I think this needs to go through run its course and go wherever it's going to go. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't really bother me that much, to be honest with you. I do think that there is a certain amount of mental illness possibly there. I'm not going to deny that. To me, it looks like that. But I am not like some people who think that homosexuality is wrong. There's something wrong with it. I really don't care, to be honest with you. I don't think that it's a problem. I think let's get right to
Ali London then uploaded a flag of South Korea LGBT in Pride and said, yes, I identify as Korean. Yes, I'm non-binary. Yes, I look like Jimin. But none of this should be a reason to outcast me from society, to dehumanize me and shame me for being who I am, a non-binary Korean person. London's manager says that London, quote, felt strongly attached to Korea and the Korean culture and feels much more connected to this than his own culture. But people are very angry at Ali London. You bigots. I don't understand why you're mad. Why are you mad? What's making you so mad, bro? Bigotry? I sense bigotry. In fact, as Ali London, their self, now says, quote, how come all the woke mob will devote all their time to threatening and bullying me for being non-binary, but won't speak out against human rights abuses in China? How come woke are silent on China's concentration camps, clamp down on democracy in Hong Kong, or oppression in Tibet? Not a terrible question, Ali London. Ali London also writes, I'm calling out the woke mob. These are the people that always preach about liberalism, tolerance, and respecting others, but are the same people sending me thousands of death threats, telling me to take my own life, and bullying me because they don't agree with who I am. Hypocrisy. And as Ollie London tweets out, being transsexual is the same thing as being transracial because you are born in the wrong body. Live your truth, Ollie London. Live your truth. Ollie London is just as much a Korean as Ollie London is a non-binary person. And anybody who denies this, just during Pride Month of all times to deny this.
Well, I have the philosophy that I like to believe in potentiality, that there's a lot of potential in the universe with humans. I think that sometimes we box ourselves in with titles and labels and identities and stuff like that. That's why I think it's interesting to see where this is going to go. I really do. I think it's interesting to see where it's going to go. I think it's probably a product of a different way of thinking, a more open way of thinking, and maybe sometimes people go overboard with that. I don't know. It's not really for me to say. It's not really for me to say. I like to believe that, this is the extent of my knowledge about sexuality, that, you see, I cannot personally imagine myself being homosexual. I feel like ever since I was a kid that I was heterosexual. I've always been attracted to women. I've never had any weird, what I call weird, fetishes, like for, having any interest in children or being forceful to the point of rape, with a woman, where some people do. I feel bad for those people. I think that for whatever reason they have that desire. Maybe they were born that way. Look at Jeffrey Dahmer. I mean, some of these people grew up in, seemingly perfectly reasonable homes, and then they turned out pretty messed up. But, we have to have lines in society that we don't cross. But just because there are legal lines, in my opinion, that say that one thing is wrong and another thing is wrong, or that doesn't mean that there isn't some kind of weird phenomenon that happens with humans, that sometimes they have a desire, a sexual desire or whatever, for something that is unconventional. I kind of feel sometimes a little bit bad for people who are, who have some of these kinds of desires and fetishes that are, maybe illegal and definitely immoral in some ways. But immoral by what standard, right? What's immoral? But you know what I mean. Or maybe you don't. If you want, just mention some stuff in the comments and ask me some questions. I'll try to get to them. But Ben, I think he's an intelligent guy. I do think that he comes a little bit from a religious worldview, does infiltrate his ideologies. I think, and I try not to do that. He wears the yarmulke. He's clearly religious more than I am. I'm Catholic. I don't, go to church even. He's wearing a yarmulke, so that would suggest that he's obviously more religious than I am. And I wonder how much of that infiltrates and affects and informs his worldview. If that's the case, he might think that homosexuality is a sin. I don't know. Some Christian friends of mine who say, "Oh, it's wrong and it's a sin." I don't really feel that way. I don't. I believe live and let live, as long as you're not hurting anybody and it's not illegal. I have no issues with it.
Sorry. You bigots! I know what you're thinking. It's time to binge some more Ben Shapiro videos.
Anyway, if you want me to get to any of your requests, I would love to. You can put it in the comments. Although I would tell you that there's a trend now on my channel where there are some people who are very kind and supportive, and they make a donation of some sort, and that's how I get to those people's requests first. I try to mix it up, but I don't have that much time in a day, you know. So I try out of respect to get to those people who have shown some support, and I try to get to their requests first. So I would suggest, if you want me to get to a request, you know, even if you bought me a cup of coffee, that's good enough. I would be happy to do it. So check out the description below. If you see one of the few first links that sounds like it might be a good fit for you, hey, reach out to me, stay in touch, let me know what you want me to do, and I'll do it. Hey, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice, and you take it easy. And if it's real easy, take it twice.